Have you noticed how empty car dealerships feel lately? It's not just you, the car market is in freefall, and it's a perfect storm of rising costs, shifting trends, and a flood of unsold inventory. What's happening behind the scenes is even crazier, and trust me, it's gonna change everything you thought you knew about buying or selling a car. When people have less money to spend, big ticket purchases like cars are usually the first thing to go. Think about it. If your grocery bill has gone up and your rent keeps climbing, are you really going to rush out to buy a new car? And on top of that, rising interest rates are making auto loans way more expensive. Even if someone wanted to buy a car, the higher monthly payments are turning them off. It's not just buyers hesitating, this hesitation is trickling down to dealers and manufacturers too.
Dealerships are having to get desperate. They're having to get really creative right now to move this inventory. Here I have a huge lineup of F-150s behind me. America's #1 selling pickup truck, but even they can't sell these.
Factories shut down, parts got delayed, and production slowed to a crawl. Even now, automakers are still struggling to catch up. And it's not just about delays. Geopolitical tensions have added yet another layer of chaos. When countries don't get along, it messes with everything, from raw materials to finished products. That means cars aren't just late to showrooms, they're sometimes not showing up at all. And at the same time, people's tastes are changing fast. Electric vehicles are stealing the spotlight, leaving traditional gas-powered cars to gather dust. And it's not just about tech, it's also about people becoming more eco-conscious. Buyers are thinking about climate change and long-term savings, which makes EVs more appealing. If you're a car manufacturer still betting big on gas guzzlers, you're probably sweating bullets right now. And then there's the classic problem of overproduction. Automakers have been riding high for years, thinking the demand would keep growing.
Hey YouTube, Untamed here. So insurance and interest rates are through the roof right now. Repossession rates, they're the highest that they've ever been within the US currently. In addition to that, inventory levels across all vehicle manufacturers, across all dealerships within the US, the highest that they have been in the last 8 years. So we are certainly on the brink of a car market crash of 2025.
But when things slowed down, they didn't hit the brakes fast enough. Now, they're stuck with way too much inventory, which is forcing them to slash prices just to clear out their lots. It's a vicious cycle. Manufacturers keep churning out cars that people aren't buying, and the market gets flooded. When you put it all together, economic stress, broken supply chains, shifting preferences, and a glut of cars, it's no wonder the market is in chaos. It's like a perfect storm where everything that could go wrong did, all at the same time. And honestly, it makes you wonder how the industry is going to dig itself out of this mess. Big manufacturers like Volkswagen, Toyota, and Ford are all reporting disappointing numbers. People just aren't buying new cars the way they used to. Why? Well, we've already talked about how economic challenges and higher loan costs are scaring off buyers. To fight back, dealerships are practically begging people to show up. You're seeing all kinds of incentives, discounts, zero-interest loans, and even free upgrades. But even those sweet deals aren't enough to make up for the drop in demand. It's like trying to put a band-aid on a broken arm. You'd think that if people aren't buying new cars, they'd turn to used ones, right? Wrong. Used cars are plummeting too. Remember when the pandemic made used cars crazy expensive? Well, those days are over now. With the market flooded and fewer buyers, prices are falling fast. That's great news if you're looking to buy, but it's a nightmare for anyone trying to sell. Trade-in values are tanking, so if you're hoping to upgrade to a newer model, you might not get much for your old one. It's a tough spot for sellers and dealerships alike. But here's where things get interesting. Electric vehicles are the one bright spot in all of this chaos. EV sales are skyrocketing, especially in places like China, where they're quickly becoming the go-to option. People are fully jumping on the EV bandwagon thanks to better technology, government incentives, and growing awareness about climate change. Traditional automakers, however, are struggling to keep up. While newer brands like Tesla or BYD are thriving, legacy companies are playing catch-up, and it's not going smoothly. For some of them, it's like trying to turn a cruise ship on a dime. It's slow, clunky, and full of setbacks. So whether it's new cars, used cars, or even EVs, every part of the market is feeling the heat.
People that take out a loan right now is taking a loan out for a monthly payment over $1,000. And the interest rates that you get on a new vehicle loan or a used vehicle loan are still equally awful as what they were a year ago today. Today's average, 7.2% on a new vehicle purchase. On a used vehicle purchase, 11.4%.
The crash is reshaping the entire landscape, and no one, not buyers, sellers, or manufacturers, are coming out unscathed. It's a fascinating and also slightly terrifying time to watch the auto industry try to figure out its next move. Remember when the pandemic hit and everything seemed to shut down overnight? Factories couldn't operate, shipments were delayed, and the whole system just sort of collapsed on itself? Even now, years later, we're still feeling the ripple effects of that breakdown. It's not just about things taking longer to arrive, it's way more complicated than that. For starters, there's a massive shortage of crucial materials that automakers rely on. Think about semiconductors, those tiny chips that control everything from your car's entertainment system to its safety features. During the pandemic, chip manufacturers prioritized gadgets like phones and laptops because, let's face it, that's what everyone was buying while stuck at home. By the time car makers needed chips again, there weren't enough to go around. And it's not just chips. Rare earth metals, which are essential for building electric vehicle batteries, are also in short supply. These materials don't grow on trees, and getting them involves mining operations that are tied up in international politics and environmental concerns. Speaking of politics, geopolitical tensions have only made things worse. When countries aren't getting along, trade becomes a nightmare. Tariffs, exports, restrictions, and supply chain disruptions all pile up, driving up the cost of raw materials and production. If you're an automaker, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Either pay way more to source what you need, or delay production entirely. Neither option is great for business, and it's definitely not great for us consumers. All of this had this huge impact on how quickly cars can make it to showrooms. Some automakers are months, hell, even years behind schedule. And when they do manage to get cars out, the production delays often mean fewer options for buyers. The fancy new color you wanted, gone. The upgraded tech package, not available. Not that long ago, most people were all about traditional gas-powered cars. You know, the ones that rumble, roar, and guzzle fuel like there's no tomorrow. But now, it feels like everyone and their dog is talking about electric vehicles or EVs. And honestly, it's not just a trend, it's a full-on shift. People are starting to think differently about what they want from a car and why they want it, and it's throwing the whole market into a whirlwind. For one, there's this huge cultural shift towards being more eco-conscious. You've probably noticed it too: recycling, using less plastic, eating plant-based foods, and now, driving electric cars. It's all connected. People are more aware of climate change and their carbon footprints, and driving a gas guzzler doesn't just sit well with a lot of folks anymore. EVs are marketed as clean, green, and kind to the planet, which makes them really appealing to anyone who wants to feel like they're doing their part. And let's not forget the long-term savings. Sure, an EV might cost more up front, but when you factor in how much less you spend on gas and maintenance, it's a pretty solid deal. Charging your car at home instead of filling it up at the pump, that's a game changer for a lot of people. Governments are also playing a big role in this shift. Around the world, they're offering incentives to push people towards EVs. Think tax breaks, rebates, and even free charging stations in some places. If you've got a government basically handing you cash to buy an electric car, why wouldn't you at least consider it? Some cities are even talking about banning gas-powered cars altogether in the next couple of decades, so the writing's kind of on the wall. EVs aren't just the future, they're becoming the present. But while this is great news for companies like Tesla and BYD, traditional automakers are scrambling to keep up. They've spent decades building their empires around gas-powered vehicles, and pivoting to EVs is no small feat. Retrofitting factories to produce electric cars is insanely expensive and time-consuming. Imagine having a whole production line designed to pump out SUVs and trucks, and now you've got to rework everything for EVs. It's like trying to turn a giant ship into a tiny harbor. It's slow, clunky, and full of challenges. So what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.